So you studied world religions, and then you end up basically spending all of these years talking about grief and loss. And so why grief? What is it that motivated you to serve in this way?
Wow, what a great question. Again, it was largely Ramdas who he always worked as a kind of conduit who wove together the different elements of my consciousness and my life. Now, my mother had died when I was 18 in 1969, and she was 55. And she died at home, and in those days, 1969, no one had ever heard the word hospice. No one knew what that meant. It wasn't a concept that existed in our culture. And if someone was dying, they certainly wouldn't be brought home unless the family was very poor and they couldn't afford to have them in a nursing home or hospital. My mother wanted to come home. And the story is in Awakening from Grief, but it was basically the doctor advised against it. He said too much of a burden on the family, but it wasn't. She was in our house, and at first we were all kind of freaked out, but then, I started to spend time with her, sitting with her, holding hands, looking in her eyes, the way that I later would look in Ram Dass's eyes, and I started to see this tremendous light in her. And one day I was sitting on her bed, holding her hand, looking in her eyes, and she couldn't speak because she had a brain tumor. So she was aphasic, which meant her speech was impacted. So we were just silent together, looking in each other's eyes, holding hands. I see this light in her, Nadia, and I had the thought, that's the part of her that isn't going to die.
Hmm.
And when I had that thought, she squeezed my hand, smiled, and nodded, like, you got it, kid. You got it. And, she died like a day or two later. Um, but it was such a powerfully transformative experience for me that I really had almost no grief about her death. And that was fascinating. I was so happy about what we had shared together that it was hard for me to drum up, some kind of woe is me, because we had connected in a way that everybody would yearn to connect with their parents, in just a moment, just a glimpse, just seeing that. So that was in the back of my mind, but there was nothing in the culture that supported that until I met Ramdas.